And then he said, "That's not a spoon, that's my tie."
Oh, stop it. That's too funny.
I know, right? Classic.
You have to share more stories like that.
The table was full, but the room felt empty. Laughter moved from one side to another, glasses touched, voices overlapped, and yet none of it reached me.
Yes,
I sat there,
understand
smiling
completely.
when I needed to, nodding when spoken
That's
to,
an interesting
playing my role so
perspective.
well that no one noticed I had already left
Indeed,
that moment
thank you.
in my mind. It was
To good
our
health and
anniversary
great
dinner.
company.
Family gathered. Close
We're
friends
so glad you're
present.
here.
And her,
This is just the
Aisha.
beginning.
sitting just across from me. Too comfortable. Too relaxed. Like she belonged there in a way that went beyond friendship. I watched them carefully, without turning my head too much. The way my husband passed her a drink before she asked. The way their eyes met, then quickly looked away. The small pauses in conversation that only made sense if you were paying attention. No one else saw it. Why would they?
I feel like
Trust
we need to
makes
talk
people
about this.
blind.
I know.
But I
It's just
wasn't blind
complicated.
anymore.
Complicated
I had seen
doesn't
enough.
mean impossible.
He laughed
What are you
at something
suggesting?
she said, a little too naturally. She touched his arm, just for a second, but it lasted longer than it should have. And still, no one reacted. Because
I
to
hope you
everyone
enjoy this
else,
traditional
this was
jollof
normal.
rice. It's a family recipe.
To me, it was
and here are
everything.
some fried plantains to
Inside,
go with it.
something was
Please,
breaking.
help yourself. I made
Not
plenty.
loudly. Not dramatically. But slowly, like something fragile finally giving up. Yet my face remained calm. I served food.
My dear,
I
are you
asked
all right?
questions.
You seem worried.
I
I'm
even
fine, Mom.
smiled when
Just
they
work
looked
stress.
at me.
You know
Because
you can always
sometimes,
talk to me.
strength doesn't
I
look
know.
like confrontation.
I
Sometimes,
understand your
it
concern,
looks
but
like
I'm fine,
silence.
really.
A
It's
silence
just been a
that
long day,
watches.
but I'm holding up.
A silence that
Let's not dwell on
understands.
it. I'm here for you.
A silence that waits. My mother leaned closer to me at one point and whispered, "You look tired." I smiled gently. I'm fine. But I wasn't. Because at that table, surrounded by people who believed in love, loyalty, and trust, I was sitting with betrayal. And the hardest part, no one knew. Not yet. But I did. And that changed everything. Before
This walk
everything
brings
changed,
back so many good
Aisha was
memories,
not
doesn't
just
it?
my friend.
It really does, just
She
like
was
old
my
times.
history.
I cherish
We
these
met when
peaceful
life was
moments with
still
you.
simple,
Me too.
when dreams
It's
were bigger
perfect.
than
I
reality
know
and
it's been
problems
tough,
felt temporary.
but you're so strong.
We shared
Thank
things
you.
most
That
people
means a
keep
lot.
hidden, our
Of course,
fears, our
I'm always
struggles,
here for
the
you.
parts of ourselves
Thank
we
you.
didn't
I
show the
appreciate
world.
that.
When I had nothing, she stood beside me. When she needed support, I gave it without question. We grew together. Not in wealth,
I
not
was just
in
thinking
status,
about our
but
first
in
day
trust.
at university. We were so
That kind of
nervous.
bond
But
doesn't
look how
come
far we've
easily.
come. I'm so grateful
It
for our
is built
friendship.
over time, through
It means
moments no one
everything.
else sees. So when I got married, there was no hesitation. She was part of it. Not just as a guest, but as someone who belonged in my new life.
Hey, welcome. I'm so
My
glad you're
husband
here.
respected
Thank
her
you.
from
It's
the
so good to
beginning.
see you.
He saw
Please
how
make yourself
close
at
we
home.
were and accepted
I
it
will,
without
thank you.
discomfort.
I'm
He
perfect,
treated her
thanks.
kindly, spoke
So,
to her
how
with
was your
ease,
day?
and
It
never
was
once
good,
gave
just
me a
busy.
reason to
How
question
about
his
yours?
intentions.
Same here. Work was
That's what
crazy,
made
but I'm glad
everything
to be
feel
home.
safe.
Me too.
It's nice
There
to just
was no
relax.
tension.
Welcome.
No
So good to
boundaries
see you.
crossed.
Thank you. I've been
At
looking
least
forward to
not
this.
in the
Come in,
beginning.
come in. Make yourself at home.
Aisha
Thank you
visited
so
often.
much. This way.
At first, it was normal. Then it became routine. She would stop by unannounced, stay longer than expected, sometimes even help around the house like it was her own. We laughed together,
Oh, that is just
ate
too
together,
funny.
lived in
I
a
know,
way that
right?
felt natural.
You have to tell that one
She's
again.
family, I would say. And I
I
meant
can't
it.
breathe.
There were nights we all sat together, talking about life, sharing stories, building something that felt solid. I trusted her with everything. My home. My space. My marriage. There was nothing I felt I needed to protect from her. Because in my mind, she would never cross that line. But at that time, none of that existed in my thoughts. There was no suspicion. No hesitation. Only belief. I
I
believed
feel
in
so
her
safe
loyalty.
with you.
I believed
I'm
in
glad.
his respect.
You can always count on me.
And most of all,
know.
I believed
That
that
means
what we had
everything.
built together
Always.
could never be broken from within.
I feel so
That
safe
was
with
my
you.
truth.
I'm
And
glad.
that was the
You can
beginning
always
of my
count on me.
mistake.
I know.
The perfect life
That means
illusion,
everything.
a home without
Always.
doubt. From the outside, our life looked complete. We were not the richest couple, but we had enough. Enough peace, enough comfort, enough reason to believe we were building something real. Our days followed a rhythm that felt steady, morning routines, shared meals, quiet evenings that didn't need words to feel full. People admired it. They saw respect in the way my husband spoke to me. They saw calm in our home, no loud arguments, no visible tension.
I appreciate you taking
To
the time
them,
to talk.
we were balanced,
Of course. I'm here to listen.
stable.
I've been
and
thinking
I
about our
believed
plans
it
for
too.
the future.
Aisha
glad.
became part
Let's
of that
discuss
rhythm
it.
without effort.
Hey, glad you could
She
make
no
it.
longer needed to call
Of
before
course.
coming.
This place looks so cozy.
The door was always open for her.
Thanks. Come, sit down.
Some days, she
Perfect,
arrived before I
thanks.
did. Other days,
Hey,
she
I'm
stayed
here.
long after I had
Welcome
grown
back.
tired.
Make yourself comfortable.
It never felt
Thanks.
strange
It's
at the
good to be
time.
home.
It felt like
Everything's
comfort.
ready inside.
Like
I love
family
evenings like
extending
this.
into our
Just
space.
unwinding on the couch, you know?
But slowly,
My family is so
something
important to
began
me.
to
We
shift.
always make time to catch up.
Not enough to
This is
alarm
my happy
me.
place. I feel so at home
Just
here.
enough to change the feeling. My husband started coming home later than usual. When I asked, his answers were simple, reasonable. Work had become more demanding, he said. I accepted it without question. Because I trusted him. But conversations became shorter.
So,
The
how
small
have you
details
been?
he used to share disappeared.
Fine.
The
You
way
seem a
he
bit
once
distant.
looked at me, fully present,
Is
began
everything
to
all
fade
right? You
into
seem
something
distant.
distracted.
I'm fine.
At
Just
first,
thinking.
I blamed routine.
You've been like this all evening.
Life
We need
changes
to talk
people,
about
I
this.
told myself.
Yes, but not here.
Comfort can make things quieter. Still, it was small. So small that anyone else would ignore it. And I tried to do the same. I held on to what I believed our life was, not
And
what
then he
it was
tripped
slowly
right over
becoming.
the rug.
No way.
Dinner still
That's
happened
hilarious.
at the same table. Laughter
Come
still
on.
filled
You
the
have to
house.
admit that was funny.
Nothing
Yes, it
had
was.
visibly broken. But something had changed. Not loudly. Not clearly. Just enough to create a space between us that hadn't been there before. And in that space, something else was beginning to grow. Something I couldn't yet name. Something I wasn't ready to see. Suspicion begins at small things that didn't feel right. It didn't begin with something obvious. There was no single moment I could point to and say,
Here
this
you
is
go.
where everything changed.
Thanks.
Instead, it came in pieces. Small details that didn't seem important on their own, but together, they started to feel heavier than they should. My husband began replying to my messages later than usual. Not hours later.
I understand
Just
the delay was
enough
frustrating.
delay to feel
Let me
different.
explain.
Okay, I'm listening.
When I asked,
Traffic was
he
worse than
always had a
expected and my
reason.
phone battery died.
Work.
That makes sense.
Traffic.
Thanks for letting me know.
Of course.
Meetings that ran longer than expected. Nothing that sounded unreasonable. Nothing that should have made me question him. And I didn't. At least, not at first. But then I noticed something else. He was on his phone more. Not openly, not in a way that looked suspicious. Just more careful. Turning the screen slightly away. Locking it quicker when I walked past.
I was
Small
just thinking
movements
about that day.
most people
You know, it
wouldn't
was so
notice.
unexpected.
But
But
I
looking
did.
back, maybe the signs were there
Because
all along.
I knew him.
It's strange how we
Aisha,
overlook things
too,
until
had
it's too
changed.
late.
Not in how often she came, but in
I
how
still
she
can't believe
behaved
that
when she was
happened.
there.
It was
She
so
laughed
funny
a little
seeing his
differently
face.
around him.
I know,
Spoke
right?
with a
We
tone
should do
that
that
felt
again.
lighter, almost
Definitely.
private.
How was your
Sometimes
day?
they would share a look I
It was
couldn't
good,
quite
thanks.
understand.
Yours?
Something quick,
Same here,
something
just
subtle,
relaxing.
but something that didn't include
That's good
me.
to hear.
I
Yeah.
tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking. That this was what closeness looked like. That I was lucky to have a husband and a friend who got along so well. But my instincts didn't agree. They didn't shout. They whispered. Quiet questions I couldn't silence completely. Why did their conversations pause when I entered the room? Why did I feel like I was arriving into moments that had already started without me? Why did something that once felt comfortable now feel slightly out of place? Still, I said nothing. Because speaking those thoughts out loud would change everything. And I wasn't ready for that. Trust is not just about believing others. Sometimes, it's about choosing not to believe yourself. I held on to the version of my life that felt safe. The version where nothing was wrong. Where my husband was still the man
This
I
reminds me
trusted.
of our quiet evenings back
Where
home.
Aisha was
Yes, I
still
was
the
just
friend
thinking
who
the
would
same.
never hurt me.
It's good to have these
But
moments.
the more I tried to stay in that version,
you,
the
always.
harder it became to ignore the truth that was quietly forming. It wasn't clear yet. It wasn't confirmed. But it was there. Growing. Waiting. And deep down, I knew something I didn't want to accept. The problem wasn't what I was seeing. It was what I was refusing to see. The discovery, the moment everything broke. The truth did not arrive with noise. It came quietly, the way things do when they are not meant to be found. That evening, I wasn't searching for anything. I had gone into the room to pick up something simple, something I can't even remember now. His phone was on the table, face down, just like always. I wouldn't have touched it. Not before. But something in me paused. Not suspicion. Not fear. Just a quiet pull. The screen lit up before I even made a decision. A message. No name saved. Just a number. But I didn't need a name. I can't wait to see you again tonight. My chest tightened. For a moment, everything inside me went still. No racing thoughts. No panic. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes when your mind understands something before your heart is ready. I picked up the phone. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. Because sometimes, the deepest shock doesn't show itself immediately. It hides. Protects you. Gives you time to see clearly. I opened the message. Scrolled. And there it was. Not one message. Not two. Conversations. Ongoing. Familiar. Comfortable. And unmistakable. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't a mistake. It was something that had been happening for a long time. The way they spoke to each other, it wasn't new. It was established. Planned. Repeated. And then I saw her name. Aisha. Not hidden. Not disguised. Right there. Like it had always been normal. Like it had always belonged. That was the moment everything changed. Not because I found out. But because I understood. This wasn't something that happened once. This wasn't weakness. This was a choice. Made again and again. Behind my back. Inside my life. With someone I trusted completely. I placed the phone back exactly where it was. Carefully. Gently. As if nothing had happened.
I made your
Because
favorite
in that
jollof
moment,
rice.
I
Let me
realized
serve you.
something
It
important.
smells amazing.
My
Thank you.
reaction
You're
would
welcome.
not change the
How
truth.
was your day? Busy,
But
but
it
good.
would change
This
what
is
came
perfect.
next.
So the project
So
went
I
well.
chose control.
We met all the deadlines.
I walked
The
out
team
of
was
the
great.
room.
We even had time to celebrate.
Not fast.
I'm just glad
Not
it's over.
slow.
Time
Just
to relax.
steady. The same way I had walked in. When he came home later, I looked at him the same way I always did. I asked about his day. I served dinner. I listened when he spoke. And he spoke like nothing had changed. Like everything was still normal. That was the hardest part. Not the betrayal. But the ease of it. The way he could sit across from me and pretend. The way she could walk into my home and smile. Inside, something had already broken. But on the outside, I was calm. Because I understood now. This was no longer about what they did. It was about what I would do next. And that required more than emotion. It required silence. The kind of silence they would never expect. The kind that watches and waits. The silent strategy, she chose not to react. The easiest thing would have been to confront them. To demand answers. To let the pain speak louder than my thoughts. But I didn't. Because something had changed the moment I saw the truth. I was no longer reacting. I was thinking. And thinking gave me control. So I said nothing. The next morning, everything continued as usual. I made breakfast. I asked simple questions. I moved through the house like nothing had happened. My husband looked at me without hesitation, without guilt strong enough to show itself.
I'm glad we could
Aisha
meet.
visited later that
Yes,
day,
it's good to
smiling
see
the
you.
same way she always
I hope
did.
everything is all right with you.
And I smiled back.
I'm fine, thank you for
Not
asking.
because I had
Of
forgiven
course.
them, but because I had
presentation went
understood
well.
them.
I'm glad.
And understanding
You seem prepared.
people gives you power.
Thanks. How
I
was your
began
day?
to watch more carefully. Not with anger. With clarity. Their patterns became easier to see once I stopped pretending they weren't there. The late messages, the quiet calls, the way they avoided being in the same space with me for too long, yet always found time when I wasn't around. It was no longer suspicion. It was confirmation. Every day added another piece. Every moment revealed something they thought was hidden. And slowly, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there. But it was no longer leading me. It was guiding me. I stopped expecting honesty from them. Stopped hoping for explanations. Because I already had the truth. And truth does not need permission to exist. What I needed now was the right moment. Not for revenge. But for exposure. Because betrayal hides best in private. And loses all its power in public. I started thinking differently. Not like someone who had been hurt. But like someone who had been underestimated. I chose a setting they could not avoid. A space where silence would speak louder than arguments. A gathering where walking away would not be easy. And where truth, once revealed, could not be denied. I planned it carefully. A simple dinner. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would raise suspicion. I invited family. Close ones. People whose presence would matter. People who valued respect, loyalty, and truth. When I told my husband about it, he agreed without hesitation. Of course he did. To him, everything was still normal. To Aisha, it was just another invitation. Another moment to sit in my space and pretend. They didn't know what I knew. And that was my advantage. In the days leading up to it, I became quieter. Not distant. Not cold. Just steady. I no longer searched their faces for answers. I no longer questioned their actions. Because I had moved past that stage. The need to understand had been replaced by the need to reveal. And there is a difference. One seeks truth. The other presents it. By the time the day arrived, I was no longer the same person who had opened that message. I was no longer the woman sitting in confusion, trying to make sense of small signs. I was certain, clear, prepared, and most importantly, calm. Because real power does not shout. It waits. And when it speaks, it does
I
not
see
need
it now,
to repeat
the pain
itself.
from my past.
That night was
But I
not
won't
about
let it
catching
define
them.
me.
They were
I
already
accept
caught.
it, and I
It
rise
was about
stronger.
showing them. Showing them that silence does not mean weakness. That patience does not mean ignorance. And that sometimes, the person you think you are deceiving is the one who has already seen everything. I had been the victim. But not anymore. Now, I was in control. And they had no idea what was coming next. The setup, a dinner they couldn't refuse. The evening arrived quietly, just like I planned. Nothing about it felt unusual. The table was set early. The house was clean. Soft music played in the background, creating the kind of atmosphere that made people relax without thinking too much about it. To anyone else, it looked like a simple family dinner. But to me, it was something else entirely. It was the moment everything would shift. My husband came home fast. He greeted me the same way he always did, with a calm voice and familiar ease. There was no hesitation in him, no sign that he suspected anything had changed. "Everything looks nice," he said, glancing around. I smiled. I wanted it to be. Aisha arrived shortly after. She walked in with confidence, her presence as comfortable as ever. She hugged me lightly, her voice warm, her expression unchanged. "You've outdone yourself," she said, looking at the table. I held her gaze for a second longer than usual. "Tonight is important," I replied softly. She didn't notice the weight behind those words. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. Guests began to arrive one by one. Close family members. People who mattered. People whose opinions carried weight. Laughter filled the room, conversation started naturally, and soon, everything felt exactly as it should. On the surface, I moved through the evening with calm precision. Serving food, joining conversations, responding when spoken to. I didn't rush. I didn't withdraw. I stayed present in a way that felt effortless. But inside, I was watching. Every movement. Every glance. Every small detail that confirmed what I already knew. They sat across from each other again. Just like before. Careful, but not careful enough. Their eyes met once, then quickly separated. A shared understanding passed between them, silent but visible to someone who knew where to look. And I did. Still,
And then he said
no
the
one
chicken was
else
dancing.
noticed.
Oh, stop.
Why would
That's
they?
too funny.
The
You
setting
have to
was
admit,
peaceful.
it was a good one. The
The
look on
mood
his
was
face was
warm.
priceless.
Absolutely.
Nothing about
So
the
I told
evening
him, you can't
suggested
just
tension
add
or
jollof
conflict.
to everything.
And what did he
That was
say?
the point.
Let me guess, he doubled down?
Because truth
Exactly.
reveals
He said
itself
it's the secret
best
to
when
life.
no one
Oh,
expects
that's
it.
too much.
My
So
husband
I was at
spoke
the
to
market,
others,
and this
laughing
woman
when
started
needed,
dancing right
playing
there.
his role perfectly.
She was so happy it made my
Aisha
day.
joined in, her
Oh,
voice
that's
light,
lovely. What
her
was she
presence
celebrating?
steady.
Sounds like a good
Together,
time.
they looked like two people who had nothing to hide. And yet, everything was hidden. I took my seat slowly, allowing the moment to settle. I looked around the table. At the faces that
It's a lovely
trusted me.
evening, isn't it?
At the people who
Yes,
believed
it
in
is.
what they were
Very
witnessing.
pleasant.
Then I looked at them. And for the first time that night, I allowed myself to feel it fully. Not the pain. Not the anger. But the certainty. This was the moment. They just didn't know it yet. Public exposure or when silence turned into truth. I waited until the room
This dish
settled.
is really something.
Until
Yes,
the
the
plates were
flavors are
half empty
wonderful.
and the conversations had
Very
softened into
satisfying,
something comfortable. That was when people listened without realizing they were
Everyone,
about to
I have
hear
some
something
exciting
important.
news. I got the
I
promotion
placed
at
my
work.
glass down gently.
Wow, that's incredible
Before we
news.
finish, I said
Congratulations!
calmly,
Yay!
"There's
Does
something
that
I
mean a
want to
party?"
share." The table grew quieter. Not completely silent, but enough for attention to shift toward me. My husband looked at me with mild curiosity.
I appreciate the opportunity to
Aisha
discuss this
glanced
matter.
up, her
After
expression
careful
relaxed,
consideration, I
unaware
believe
of
we have a
what was
solid
coming.
foundation to build upon.
I held my
Let's proceed
composure.
with the next steps collaboratively.
No anger.
So, in our culture,
No rush.
sharing a meal is a way to build
Just
strong
clarity.
community bonds. It's
I've
not
been
just about
thinking a
eating,
lot
it's about the
about
stories
trust,
and
I
traditions we pass
continued.
down. That's why
What
these
it
gatherings are
means
so
and
important.
how easily it can be misunderstood. A few people nodded, assuming it was just a reflection. That made it easier. Because truth often enters quietly. I reached beside me and picked up my phone. I didn't always understand it, I said. But recently, I've learned
Everyone,
something
I have
important.
something to show you.
My husband shifted slightly in his
This
seat.
changes everything.
Aisha's eyes followed
Is that
my
true?
hand. I tapped the screen. and placed the phone in the center of the table. A voice filled the space. Soft at first, then
I
clear,
have something to tell you all.
recognizable.
I'm leaving the country.
His voice,
For good.
her voice. No confusion. No doubt.
The data
room
indicates
froze.
a clear upward trend in
No one
performance
moved.
over the last quarter.
No one
We need to
spoke.
maintain this momentum
The
moving
words
forward.
continued,
The
each
projections
one
for the
revealing
next
what
cycle
they had
are
tried so
positive.
carefully to hide. There was no need for explanation. The truth was already speaking for itself. I didn't look at them immediately. I let the recording finish. Let every second settle into the silence that followed. Then I lifted my gaze. My husband's face
I
had
have something to
changed.
tell you.
The confidence was gone.
I'm leaving.
In
For
its
good.
place, something
What?
uncertain.
I don't understand.
Something
This
exposed.
can't be happening.
Aisha couldn't look at me.
I just can't believe
Her
this
hands
is
were still.
happening.
Her breathing uneven.
Why now?
I spoke again. Still calm. Still
I
steady.
appreciate everyone being here
I
tonight.
didn't find this by
We
accident,
need to discuss
I
our
said.
plans moving forward.
And I didn't
Our
bring it here
unity
to
and
create a
shared
scene.
responsibility are
I
essential.
paused, letting my words
Thank you all
land.
for gathering here today.
I brought
In
it
this
here
room, we
because
have the
some things
collective
should
power
not
to
stay
enact
hidden.
real change. Let us
No
commit to
one
this path of
interrupted.
unity and progress. Together,
No
we will
one
appreciate
defended
overcome
them.
any obstacle.
Because there was
I need to
nothing
talk
left
to you about
defend.
something.
Stop.
My husband
Please
finally
don't.
tried to speak.
All right. I
It's
understand.
not. I raised my hand slightly. Not
I
aggressively.
was just going to say that I
Just
think we
enough.
should. Stop!
Don't, I said quietly. And he stopped. Because even he understood that anything he said
We
now
need
would
to
only
address
make
what
it
happened.
worse.
It's affecting everyone.
I turned
know,
to
but
Aisha.
I can't right now.
Slowly.
Avoiding it won't solve
Deliberately.
anything. We must face it together.
You had access to my home, I said. To my life. To my trust. She closed her eyes briefly, as if trying to escape the moment. But there was nowhere to go. And you chose this, I added. Not as a question. As a fact. Tears began to form in her eyes. But I didn't react. Because this was no longer about emotion. It was about truth. I looked around the table.
Everyone, listen
At the
carefully.
people who had
we must
come
address this
expecting a
issue
peaceful
head on.
evening.
I expect complete cooperation
Now
from each of
sitting
you.
in
If we
complete
falter,
silence.
we risk everything we've built.
Witnessing something
Now
they
let's
never
proceed.
imagined.
So,
This is
about the
what
proposal
betrayal
from
looks
yesterday?
like, I said.
Yes, I reviewed it. The metrics look
Not
promising.
loud.
Good. We
Not
should align on the
obvious.
next steps.
Agreed.
Just
Let's schedule a
hidden.
follow-up.
Until it can't be hidden anymore. The shift was clear. The attention that once rested on me had moved. Now it was on them. On their actions. On their choices. The weight of the room had changed direction. Then clear. Recognizable. His voice. Her voice. No confusion. No doubt.
We have confirmation.
room froze.
The transaction is complete and
No one
irreversible.
moved.
The next phase begins
No
at dawn.
one spoke.
All teams must be ready.
The words
Monitor all
continued,
channels.
each one
Report
revealing
any
what they
anomalies
had tried so
immediately.
carefully to hide. There was no need for explanation. The truth was already speaking for itself. I didn't look at them immediately.
We need
I
to
let
talk.
the recording
It's serious.
finish.
What
Let
is
every
it?
second
made a
settle
decision.
into the
I'm leaving.
silence that followed.
Leaving? I don't
Then
understand.
I lifted my gaze.
Final. But what?
My husband's face had changed. The confidence was gone. In its place, something uncertain. Something exposed. Aisha couldn't
Everyone,
look at me.
thank you for joining me.
Her hands
We
were
must
still.
remain united and
Her
focused.
breathing uneven.
Our shared commitment
I
will guide
spoke
us.
again.
Together go come any
Still calm.
challenge. Thank
Still
you all for
steady.
joining me. This proposal
I
is a
didn't
game
find
changer.
this by
It will
accident,
boost
I
efficiency by
said.
40% and cut costs.
And I
Today's
didn't
clear,
bring
and the
it here
feedback
to
is
create a
overwhelmingly
scene.
positive. Together,
I
we can make
paused,
this happen.
letting my words land.
I was just
I
saying that
brought
I
it
think
here
we
because
should.
some things should
Enough.
not stay hidden. No one interrupted. No one defended them. Because there was
We need to
nothing
discuss
left to
this.
defend.
Avoiding it won't help.
My husband
Look
finally
at me.
tried to
This
speak.
is important for us.
It's not, I raised
Please,
my hand slightly.
let's resolve this together.
Not aggressively. Just enough. Don't, I said quietly. And he stopped. Because even he understood that anything he said now would only make it worse. I turned to Aisha. Slowly. Deliberately. You had access to my home, I said. To my life. To my trust. She closed her eyes briefly, as if trying to escape the moment. But there was nowhere to go.
Listen to
And
me.
you chose this,
We must
I
stand firm
added.
together, united
Not
no
as
matter
a
the
question.
challenges. I expect
As a
complete
fact.
silence and focus from each of you
Tears
now.
began
Our
to form
future
in her
depends on
eyes.
this resolve.
But I
The
didn't
projections for
react.
Q3 look very strong.
Because this
I
was
agree.
no longer
The new
about
strategy is
emotion.
working.
Exactly.
was
And the
about
team
truth.
feedback has been positive.
I looked
Yes, they're
around the
motivated.
table.
We should build on this.
At the people who had come expecting a peaceful evening. Now sitting in complete silence. Witnessing something they never imagined. This is what betrayal looks
Levels
like,
are stabilizing,
I said.
ma'am.
Not
Containment
loud.
is secure. No breaches.
Not obvious.
All parameters
Just
are green.
hidden.
We are fully
Until
operational.
it can't be hidden anymore. The shift was clear. The attention that once rested on me had moved. Now it was on them. On their actions. On their choices. The weight of the room had changed direction. My husband lowered his gaze. Aisha wiped her tears but said nothing. Because they both knew. There was no explanation that could undo what had already been revealed. No words strong enough to rebuild what they had broken. And for the first time since I found out, I felt it. Not victory. Not satisfaction. But release. The kind that comes when truth is no longer carried alone.
I have considered all
I stood up
perspectives
slowly.
carefully.
Not in
My decision
anger.
is final
Not
and
in
stands
drama.
firm.
Just
There will be no
finished.
further discussion.
They thought I would never know, I said, my voice steady. Then I looked at them one last time. But I did. And in that moment, everything changed. Moral authority and reflection, what betrayal teaches. No one moved for a moment. The silence held
Listen
the room
closely,
in place,
my
heavy
child.
but no
For
longer
what I am
confused.
about to share is the
Then,
fruit of many
slowly,
years of
my
experience.
father leaned forward. He had been quiet the entire evening, watching,
My family,
listening,
let us
saying
approach this
nothing
calmly
until
and
now.
with one heart.
When he
And I
spoke,
converse in
his
Miss
voice was
Lianko.
calm.
Your silence
it
speaks
carried
volumes of
weight.
your trust. We will
This is
succeed
not
together.
just about what we had, he said. It is about what it means. The room remained still. He turned his gaze toward my husband first, not with
My
anger,
people, we must
but
continue
with a
to
kind
uphold
of
the truth.
disappointment that
Our fathers
needed no
built this
volume.
nation on integrity, not on fleeting
Trust
gains.
is not
We
given
cannot falter
lightly,
now.
he
Let us
continued.
stand firm in our resolve and
It is
guide the
built
next
over
generation
time,
with
and
wisdom.
it carries responsibility. When you break it, you are not just hurting someone, you are revealing who you truly are. My husband lowered his head further.
Aisha, I need you to
Not
listen to
in
me very
defense.
carefully. This family
In
is relying on you.
acceptance.
You must be responsible.
Then my father looked at
I raised you
Aisha.
better. Do not disappoint me.
And you,
Is that
he
clear?
said, were
Yes, Papa.
welcomed like family. You were given a place that many earn over years. And still, you chose to destroy what you were trusted to protect. Aisha's tears fell quietly, but no one stepped in to comfort her. Because this was not a moment for comfort. It was a moment for truth. My father then
I'm
turned to
worried this
me,
decision will affect
and
everything.
his expression
I
changed.
understand. We will
There
face
was
it
no
together.
disappointment
But what
there.
if it's too late?
Only understanding.
We'll get through.
You remained
My
silent,
daughter, I see the
he
worry
said.
in your eyes.
Not
I know,
because you
Father,
were
it's
weak,
just so
but
hard
because you were
sometimes.
strong enough
Remember,
to wait.
you have the strength to overcome.
His words settled
Thank
into
you.
me,
Your words give
steady
me
and
strength.
grounding.
Everyone, I
Then
want to
he
address you
addressed
all.
everyone at the table.
Our unity is our strength. Let
Too
us cherish
often,
and uphold
we
it.
rush to judge the
We have
one who
much to
is
be
hurt,
grateful
he
for.
said.
Let wisdom
We
guide our
ask
path.
what they did wrong.
You see, in our tradition,
We question their
must always
actions.
remember the past.
But tonight has shown us something different. He paused,
It teaches us who we
letting
are.
the weight of his words
Let me
spread.
be absolutely clear.
The failure
We
here
will
does
not
not
tolerate
belong
any
to her,
further
he
delays.
said firmly.
This matter will be resolved
It belongs
now
to
on
those
our
who
terms.
chose betrayal over loyalty. A shift moved through the room. Subtle, but undeniable. The looks that had once been uncertain now carried clarity. People were no longer searching for explanations. They had already seen enough. My mother reached for my hand. This time, there was no hesitation.
My children,
Only
we gather
support.
here as a family, united in
Pain
purpose.
teaches,
The
my
decisions we
father
make must
continued.
reflect our shared heritage and
But it
wisdom.
also reveals.
Let us proceed with one voice
And
for
what
the good
has
of all.
been revealed
We
here
agree,
cannot be
Father.
hidden
My
again.
friends, true respect isn't
No one
demanded by words.
disagreed.
It is earned by our actions
Because no
and
one
the empathy
could.
we show. Lead
This
by
is the
example,
difference
and others
between
will follow.
character and
This is how we build
appearance, he
strong
added.
moral connections.
One is shown when things are easy. The other is revealed when things fall apart. The room felt lighter. Not because the situation had changed, but because it had been understood. The weight I had been carrying alone was no longer mine. It had been placed where it belonged. And for the first time since everything began, I wasn't standing in it by myself. Resolution and redemption, she walked away stronger. I did not stay to argue. I did not stay to hear apologies that had already come too late. Instead, I picked up my bag, looked around the room one last time, then chose something they never expected me to choose. Peace. I'm done, I said quietly. Not as a threat. Not as a reaction. But as a decision. No one stopped me. Because some endings do not need permission. They only need clarity. I walked out of that house with nothing in my hands, but everything in my control. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned me. It no longer defined me. In the days that followed, I did not look back. I did not call. I did not ask questions. Because I already had
Heard
my
about the new
answers.
manager? Quite the story.
And sometimes,
Yes, they say
knowing the
she's
truth
very
is enough
demanding.
to move
And those
forward.
changes to the project
Their
deadlines.
story did
I
not
wonder how
last.
she'll handle the team.
It
We'll see.
couldn't.
This is my
Because
new
what is
beginning.
built in
I stand with
betrayal cannot
confidence and
survive in
strength.
truth.
I am ready for the
People
challenges
talked.
ahead.
Not
With
about
poise and
me.
resilience, I
About
embrace this
them.
moment.
Trust was lost. Respect disappeared. And slowly, everything they thought they had gained began to fall apart. As for me, I chose something different. I chose to rebuild. Not loudly. Not for others to see. But for myself. Because real strength is not in how you expose others. It is in how you choose yourself after being broken. And in the end, I understood something simple. Loyalty cannot be replaced. Trust cannot be forced. And silence, when carried with strength,